Think about tying your shoes. You don't get taught to tie your shoes one time. It's over and over and over again. And I think there's these critical moments that matter. What matters the first week? What matters the first month? What matters the first 30, 60, 90 days? But then sometimes we forget people after 90 days.
Yeah,
because we're like, oh,
bye, good luck.
You're fine. Now you know all the things. Yeah. You figured everything out. Well, then what matters when they change a role? Or what matters when they become a people leader? Or what matters when they're 8 months in and maybe they're starting to get a little bored? Are we reminding them? Are we showing them? Are we teaching them things that are important 6, 9, 12 months down the line, and then 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the line?
Paaras, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Nice to see you. Where are you joining me from in the world?
I am in the States. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a rough morning. Our home team played last night for Monday Night Football, so it was a late night.
Yeah, I feel like in the US, you have to be a fan. It's like you have no choice. It's like, is it like, you got to take sides?
Well, it's so interesting, Chris. So I'm not from the States. I was born overseas.
Oh, okay.
And so when my family moved here permanently, it was right before I started kindergarten. And they told my mom and dad that one of the best ways to kind of assimilate into the States was to pick a baseball team, pick a football team, watch Oprah, and the Golden Girls. Those were
interesting. Yeah.
That was the checklist.
You've also just immediately done that and made enemies though, because you've picked a side. So you've chosen
America.
A side. Yeah.
America, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. You've chosen a side, but
that's right.
Yeah. No worries. Before we jump into the more detail, tell everyone a little bit more about you and your background and the journey to where we are now.
Yeah, sure. So, I am a diehard HR professional. I love the world of HR. But wasn't born here, started thinking I was going to be a child psychologist and found my way into the business world. And the thing that I love about business, and actually, Chris, you and I were talking about this earlier. When we think about, now we call them people teams. We're even transitioning again from personnel to
HR,
human resources,
human
people
capital.
Teams.
We forgot about that one.
Human capital. That's where I work. So I work for a great HCM company called Paycor. And the thing that I love about my job is that you get to run and work with your teams. So my people team, all the people that we get to serve at Paycor. But then there's also this really unique opportunity to connect with HR leaders, employees and employers of all the customers and potential customers that we get to support. And what I love about that is I think we're always trying to find these ways where we're different and better when there's so much value in figuring out what other people are going through that's the same and how we can actually work together to improve the ecosystem. And that's, oddly and maybe uniquely, one of my favorite things about this job is that you get to be a partner and empower all of the functions in your business. And we get to remind people every single day that our special sauce is the human beings that said yes to us when they accepted the job, and then that say yes to us every morning, right? When they wake up to do their very best. And it's so exciting because I don't know about you, but I'm not the exact same person every single day. And businesses aren't the exact same every single day. Sometimes the trends at a macro, level feel like they never change, but the day to day is so different. And being able to add value is, I don't know about you, but it's kind of boring at work when you don't feel like you're adding value or making 100%. Something better. And we get the chance to do that every single day.
No, I love that. It's interesting because it is, like you said, because you have an impact both internally and externally to your customers. It's kind of supercharged your role. The impact that you can have.
Well, and it's my favorite thing. I love meeting with either current customers or prospects, and not just like talking to them about how to use tools, but just in this virtual environment now, just being able to pull up my screen and say, this is what my dashboard looks like. This is what the one-on-ones look like with my team. This is how we think about recognition. This is how we bring this really important like people process and people outcome to life. And I love people's reactions because they're like, is that a PowerPoint slide? And I'm like, no, it's just, it's my real work. And I love that because, you know, in this realm of, I think like social media filters and retakes and editing yourself, we've like forgotten, I think, like the genuine awesomeness and just real and just being able to share exactly what you're looking at with somebody else, particularly when it comes to how you empower the people in your business, I think is super powerful.
Yeah. I just want to quickly transition back to how do you go from being child psychologist to HR?
Yeah, I mean, basically, like some of it is I had a professor tell me that what would make me great at being a child psychologist would probably also like kill my insides. And so I was left at this fork in the road of the job that I thought I was always going to have, and then a lot of uncertainty. And so I was working for Limited Brands Victoria's Secret at the time as a summer job, and just really learned through that experience that I loved the business of business, right? How businesses make money, how people
I love
impact.
The fact that you just said you normally people say I like the business, like the people bit, but I love the fact that you said business because business is people, always business, and they don't.
That's right. And people. We say, you know, empowering leaders to build winning teams, or we talk a lot about powering people through powering performance through people. And people is what powers a business, right? Regardless of if you work in healthcare, if you work in a service industry, if you work in retail, if you work in technology, none of those things happen really, really well and in a scalable way without human beings. And so I fell in love with the business of business. And then I fell even more deeply in love with how people impact a business. And if you can really get to know people, if you can really understand what matters to them, how magically, right, you can be a motivational factor to people finding success, not just in their day-to-day, but like long-term success and wealth for themselves or their families or whatever else is important to them. And it's really cool. Like, it's so cool. It's so rewarding. And I'm excited to do it every day.
I'd love to talk about the new report that you and the team just launched. The HR in 2025 insights and predictions from 7,000 plus HR, finance, and IT pros. So I'd love to. So the first one that the report talks about is recruiting. What are some of the sort of challenges that you're seeing in recruiting and hiring right now?
How many can I say? Like 100.
You have to do a whole season of the podcast.
Yeah, we can do a whole season. You know, but they're challenges and they're also really exciting. So I think we're seeing a couple things. One, people are still trying to figure out, like, how do I find a job without ever talking to anybody? Chris, you and I didn't get to chat about, you know, how old we were, what the workforce looked like when we joined. But like, you know, when I got my job at Victoria's Secret in the States, we used to do this thing. You walked the mall. You got dressed up in work clothes. You went store to store. You picked up applications. 100%. If you were lucky, right, you got an interview with an actual human. Now, you know, think about how many times you've applied for a job and in 60 seconds you get a thanks but no thanks email back, right? And you never even have that opportunity. So I think, one, human beings are still trying to figure out, well, how do I navigate this? And I think one of the outcomes that we see from that is sometimes we see people applying for everything. And you're like, well, did you read the job required? Like, do you know what the job is? And so for candidates, I think it's hard. They're trying to figure out what to apply for, how to stand out. I think for recruiters, it's hard because you're getting such a influx in applicant flow, but not necessarily the types of profiles that you need for a role. And then it's a mix of, are you interviewing virtually? Who are you interviewing with? Is it a panel? Do you ever get to go anywhere on site? How do you ask questions while showing that you're interested, but also as a human being trying to identify if that job is right for you? And so while those can seem like challenges, I think those are also the things that make our jobs and jobs of people leaders really exciting. And how do we really know our companies? How are we really clear on what we want this role to accomplish? And then how do we merge all of that together to ensure when we are getting the opportunity to interview people, that we're really helping them to see what it means to work here, what the day-to-day is going to look like. You know, one of the other trends in the report is how quickly sometimes new hires are leaving after, you know, being selected for a job. And I think sometimes what we find is a lot of that is once they get into the job, it's not the job that they thought that it was.
Yeah, I saw
now think about
there. That's pretty, like, I think it was 38% are likely to leave in the first 2 years.
Within the year.
Oh,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Within the first 2 years. And I think
in the next 12 months. No, you're right.
12. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Which is pretty shocking.
It is. But think about the control in that, right? So like if people are leaving within a year, there's something that's happening in the system that we can fix. Either we're not being clear on what the role is going to feel like, or the person's not getting the supports that they need to be successful when they're there. So you can look at it and say, oh, well, 38% of people are going to leave. Or you can look at it and say, I have an opportunity to really save the right amounts of those 38% of people by doing what's in my circle of control right or better. Or differently based on who's coming into the workforce.
Well, that is, if that isn't a case to invest in a robust onboarding experience, I don't know what is. Because a lot of that, I'm sure, is going to be how they were onboarded, the reason.
Yeah, how they were onboarded, and I think remembering. I'm trying to think of like a fun, think about tying your shoes, right? You don't get taught to tie your shoes one time.
Nope.
You don't get onboarded to tying your shoe one time, right? It's over and over and over again, and then you get a little bit better. And then we teach you how to do it a little bit differently. And then you get a little bit better and we teach you maybe 2 other ways to think about it. And then you find your own way. And I think there's, these critical, we call them like moments that matter. A lot of places think about it in that way. But like what matters the first week? What matters the first month? What matters the first 30, 60, 90 days? Mm-hmm. But then sometimes we like forget people after 90 days.
Yeah,
because we're like,
oh, bye, good luck.
You're fine. Like now you know all the things. Yeah. You figured everything out. Well, then like what matters when they change a role, or what matters when they become a people leader, or what matters when they're 8 months in and maybe they're starting to get a little bored, right? Like how do we make sure, whether you're calling it onboarding or you're calling it engaging, but how do we go from these like checkbox moments of, did you tell them who their manager was? Did you tell them what the acronym stood for?
Yeah.
Did you tell them who to call for what? To also like, are we reminding them? Are we showing them? Are we teaching them the things that are important 6, 9, 12 months down the line, and then 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the line?
Yeah. And that's when it comes to also making sure that your values are embedded in the business. It's not a checkbox. It's not a thing you just do in the first.
That's right.
It shows up every day, whether in your one-to-ones, your team meetings, your processes, how people were rewarded, how they're recognized. That's an ongoing process.
Well, and like language is so important.
Language. Yeah.
Give them the language and then show them, what does the language mean? What does the language look like? What does it look and sound like when you're doing it right? What might it look and sound like if you're not doing it right? I use this analogy all the time. So if people that know me are listening to this, they're probably rolling their eyes. But Chris, you and I just met this morning. Let's pretend that you had spinach in your teeth, right? and or the other way, I had spinach in my teeth, and we get done with this podcast. You and I talked about never being able to use the bathroom during the day, but let's pretend we make it to the bathroom. And I see that I have spinach in my teeth. I'm going to be like really pissed that we sat on the phone for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and you didn't tell me.
Well, whilst we're here,
because
you've got something, right? No, joking. Imagine. You'd be
but
like Chris. Yeah.
How easy is it to say, hey, you have spinach in your teeth?
Yeah.
But we struggle so much at work saying,
worried about
hey,
yeah,
like we didn't hit the mark here. Or, hey, you like really hit the mark here. Let's talk about that. And so, one of the things at my work that I love is, one, we have great guiding principles that really, I think, showcase who we are. But we've also built our leadership model around those guiding principles. So when we talk about things like take care of each other, we can tell people, what does take care of each other mean at Paycor? So not only why is it important, but like, what does that behavior look like?
Yeah.
How does it show up? Because then if people know what it looks like to be good at something, then it's a choice. Are they going to do it?
Model it, yeah.
Or are they not going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are we going to do if they do it? And equally as important, what are we going to do if they don't do it? But we can't leave everything to guessing. So while I said everything shouldn't be a checklist, language is really important, and having shared language, but also having shared understanding of what something means and what it looks like at your company is so important.
Yeah. I was having a similar conversation week before that. We had a global well-being panel where we had around 1,000 heads of global well-being from companies. And one of the key things was to your point of giving people the language to have those conversations, especially when it comes to topics like well-being and the stigma attached.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people just don't want to say something because they don't know how to say it, and they don't want to offend someone, or they don't, and you give people the language to be able to have to open up that. All of a sudden, it opens up doors and relationships and breaks down stereotypes to be able to do that.
Well, and I think what you just said is so important. And it's not so much that I worry is a strong word, but I do worry about it sometimes, which is the importance of relationships, right? Like if you and I just met today and I said something that maybe didn't land with you the way that I wanted, we don't really know each other. We don't have a trusting relationship. So now you could say, oh, that Paaras, she's a real jerk. Listen to what she said. Versus if I'm your business partner and we've worked together for a long time and I say something and you're like, you know what, that either I'm not hearing it how she meant it, because it doesn't sound like something that she would say or something that she would mean in that way, because you have a relationship. So we talk about it. I used to work for a consulting firm, and we talked about familiarity, comfort, and trust all the time. Everybody wants to get to trust. I trust you, don't trust you. But, putting the time in to become familiar with somebody and then getting comfortable with that person, it's the outcomes of those behaviors that lead to trust. Trust doesn't just happen or not happen. It's through intentionality and how we build relationships with one another. And the thing that I worry about is, one, how can we support people in building those relationships virtually?
Yeah.
Or in a hybrid format. And then number two, when we look at what's happening on the world around us, and, you make one comment on social media and you get 6,000 nasty comments back, because it's so easy to say something to somebody that you're never going to see.
Or to take something out of context.
Absolutely.
Because people want to see the negative in something where it's like, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, and how many times have you seen something and then you immediately hit comments and someone immediately says, just here for the comments, because they know it's going to be outlandish.
Yeah.
Right? It's triggered somebody, and now we're finding entertainment in the comments.
I would say 90% of the conflict that I find even in my own company comes down to miscommunication. Someone misinterprets something. Someone someone didn't mean to say something. And then it all blows up, and then we kind of meet together. We talk about it, and we're like, "Oh, is that what it was? You just like, and it's like, and someone's read into something a little bit more, and taking it the wrong way. And I'm like, and I'm guilty of this too, where I'm like, I've sent a text quickly to someone, or sent an email without really thinking how I've worded and how it could be perceived, right? Learn that the hard way. Now actually, no, these conversations have to be had in person, because, you know how people can perceive that. I would say like 80% of the conflict or challenges that we face is through that.
Absolutely. I just had this the other night. There's a woman on my team who's like so good, and I was rushing, and so I sent a note back to her really fast. And then when I got her reply back, I was like, oh gosh, she thinks something bad happened.
Yeah.
And so I immediately wrote back like, hey, all good. This is what I meant. But think about how many times we don't go back and say, all good, this is what I meant.
And people just sit with it.
People just sit with it.
Yeah.
They sit with it and they stew on it.
And
now you've impacted.
Find out when they're leaving. They find out in the exit interview. They're like, well, that's something the amount of times I've had people leave the company in my previous company where I was for 20 years, or in this company where I'm like, if you ask me, could have that been avoided? It's like almost like 100% of the time is yes. Like nearly.
And how many times have you?
I'm like,
yeah.
I wish we had a conversation around if you would have come to me, But then sometimes I'm like, I didn't create the environment where they thought they could do that, so it's on me. I didn't create that psychological safety, or the business itself, the larger business I worked in at the time, just didn't, create that environment where they felt like they could step forward and express their concerns.
And Chris, we were talking about earlier. Loving the business of business and business people and people as business. Mm-hmm. Like, think about what you just said. What is the environment? Who creates the environment?
Yeah.
People.
Mm-hmm.
It always comes back to people and how we show up for each other, how we don't show up for each other. Do we spend time in building, relationships that matter? And that doesn't mean that like we agree on everything all the time. Actually, science will tell you, you talked about miscommunication. Our brains are wired in certain ways. So if I tend to be more right-brained and you tend to be more left-brained, we're always going to miscommunicate with one another.
Yeah. Because
our brains work differently. But unless we take that time to understand that about each other, and our muscle memory goes to, that's just how he processes versus he's a jerk.
Do you know one of the things I've been doing recently, which if anyone listening should practice this if you're having this issue, is whenever I start my meetings, I start by sharing my intention. So I say, my intention for this meeting is X. And that just sets you up for success, because everyone understands, even if the topic gets a bit heated or if people disagree, this is the intention of why we've set this meeting and what we want to achieve. And it just stops you from going... for people to misinterpreting it or feeling attacked, so sometimes it's like, my intention for this meeting is to get to the bottom of why X isn't working, and it's like, oh, okay, cool.
That's right.
And all of a sudden it kind of breaks down the barrier, and everyone's like, all right, together we're going to figure this out. It's not like no one's being attacked, no one's being pointed out. It's just like, this is the intention of, and I've just been doing, I learned that recently. I've been like, every meeting, this is the intention of what I want to get out of this meeting.
Chris, what I love about that is if you think about the transformation of like product organizations, it's just that. It's going from being task oriented to being outcome oriented. So if you declare the intention, right, 100%. Or you declare the outcome, you can still have really great dialogue and debate. You're set up, actually, I believe, in your studio to have some really cool debates, but you can have dialogue and you can have debate. But what you're aligned on is that you're solving for the same thing.
100%.
And I think what you want is the diverse dialogue, because that's likely the best. You're going to get to the best solution when you have lots of different brains trying to tackle the problem. And now you've worked through the muck because you've declared, this is what we're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. or this is my intention. And so I really appreciate that you use that word.
Yeah, no worries. I want to get into some more of the data of this report because it's so cool. And if anyone's listening, I'm going to share it in the description of wherever you're listening or watching right now. So one of the surveys that you did, it was around the biggest challenges to recruiting. And it kind of goes back to the conversation earlier. Number one biggest challenge was actually finding quality workers. And I didn't think that would be number one, but given your feedback around now how quickly people are just applying to jobs, it's almost so easy that you're getting more applications, but the quality is now a challenge.
That's right.
So I didn't really make those connections until you said that. It's like, okay, because now it's so easy, right? You know, it turns your LinkedIn into a CV automatically. You press a button, it's gone. And sometimes people are applying for like 5 jobs in the same company, and you like, to your point, did you even read the job description, or did you just hit reply as well? And then secondly, the second one was actually then convincing candidates to accept the offer, which was 15%. And I feel like this is where technology helps, because if you can automate some of the admin work, your recruiting team can spend more time on that second part. Really building the relationships, not making it feel like a transaction. You know, this is, you know, moving jobs is one of the biggest decisions people make in their lives. So they want to feel like it's a moment that someone actually is there. And I feel like freeing up our recruiters to have those type of conversations and build those relationships, and it could be over a period of time, right? Probably increase that 15%.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's recruiters and hiring managers.
Yeah, and hiring managers, 100%.
Because the applicant is also like, okay, is the recruiter telling me the same thing that the hiring manager is telling me? Is the job like really what I think the job is? And is everybody telling the same? Am I getting a clear message of what this role could be? And then the other piece is, which I actually am like very excited about, things like pay transparency. I get a nice amount of calls from reporters that'll say, is it true that people are paying less for jobs? And the fact of the matter is, how businesses look at how they pay for jobs is quite data driven, right? But what we forget to realize, I think sometimes as human beings, is that can ebb and flow based on the needs of the business. So if you have, I'm going to make this up, Chris, because I know nothing about all that it takes to create content, right? The way in which you do. Okay. But I'm assuming you have a producer, you have a director, you have a host, maybe you have some writers. Well, there's going to be some times where you really need some writers. And so you're going to flex up your energy, maybe flex up some of your pay on how you attract writers, which I don't know about for your business, but my business, there's not just like unlimited piles of just like money that are laying around.
I wish.
And right. So if I'm going to invest here, that might mean I can't invest here in the same way. And so it's not about companies or people just paying less or not wanting to pay more. But I think people want to work for a company that's making really intentional choices about the roles, how they market value those roles, and how they pay for those roles, because those are the types of companies, to your words, that have that business intention and focus to not just be around in 2024, but to be around and thriving in 2034, 44, 54, 64. You can't kind of make those rash judgments and assume or hope, right, that you'll be able to scale or thrive for years to come.
No, I agree. On that point, I was surprised to see, in terms of the section where you speak about turnover or retention drivers, that the most important things that people look for when considering a new job is pay or benefits. I thought it'd be flexibility, but that is second. So 23% pay and benefits. Second place, more flexible schedule at 15%. I thought that would be the other way around.
Well, I think I don't have this data in front of me, but I think 3 or 4 years ago it would have been flipped. But I think the muscle memory has changed in that, because of what a lot of companies that were able to allow a different type of flexibility started doing that during COVID.
Yeah, because
they had to. And so that flexibility component, I think in some industries, is just more readily available now. So, for me, for example, Paycor is the first place that I've worked that's been virtual first. I worked for a grocery retailer before I came to Paycor. And during COVID, we went virtual for a short period of time, but we were also essential workers. And so the hybrid environment became more of our norm, but even that provided more flexibility than 5 days in the office. And now you're seeing so many companies either be completely virtual or have more hybrid models that are already allowing for that flexibility that people were seeking.
Because it's becoming more common practice, commonplace, it's less of a standing out factor, because most companies offer that anyway. They kind of understand it's table stakes at this point.
That's right.
To attract.
That's right. And in certain industries, you if you work in a warehouse, you cannot work from a warehouse from home, but those companies have also found ways to offer flexibility. Those industries have found ways to offer flexibility in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah, they've done it in terms of like their schedules, like giving them more flexibility around their hours, the shifts.
Absolutely.
As well. So it's and in third place, no surprise there, career growth. It's more and more important now. People kind of expect that walking into the organization. Even me, I had 2 interviews this week. It was one of the first questions they both asked to me. What are the career opportunities, development opportunities at HR leaders? And I didn't really get that 5 years ago. It wasn't kind of top of the agenda. But now like there's this real hunger and appetite for this next generation, like to grow and develop very quickly. Whereas when I was younger, it was quite a slow going up the ladder over literally. In my experience, was literally a 10-year process until I became a director in the company. That seems like a million miles away for now. This new generation, 10 years. They're like, no, we want it now.
Yeah. What I think is what I do think is different, and I'm eager to see how it plays out as we have generations leaving the workforce and generations coming into the workforce. Is like, even your hands, you did like this.
Yeah, but now it's like this.
And now it's like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think,
or like this, any direction. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And now you're seeing people that were like here and have made it here that are like, I want to go back to like here.
That's how I felt, by the way. Because when I was made a manager for the first time, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. I want to go back to being an individual contributor. Take me back there. So Chris,
that's a trend that we're seeing again.
Really?
Now.
Interesting.
Yes, where you're seeing people leaders say, cool, did it. I want to go back. I want to go back.
Yeah.
And it's like, we use the word go back. I love this for people. I think this is,
before. That wasn't a career pathway. So the only way you could make more money was to go up. But now companies do have that opportunity. Sorry to cut you off.
No, but you're absolutely right. And I think it's changed how we think about it. Like, going back now doesn't mean what going back meant 20 years ago, right? Like, it's not this negative connotation. I think there's more power behind. I'm like deciding what I want to do, how I want to work, what I value, how I want to live. And I can do that at the company that I've been at, or I can find experiences in other functions or with other employers, which I think is pretty neat.
Yeah. Talking about moving around, one of the interesting predictions that you share in the report, and I've seen this firsthand play out, is the number of HR leaders that are resigning. I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm seeing a lot of HR resignations over the last couple of years. I think some of that is off the back of the pandemic, which is fully understandable as well. But the data in the report said nearly 50% of HR professionals that have been in their roles for 2 years or less were likely to resign or leave the company. So kind of like an average lifespan of a HR professional is like 2 years now.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I think there's this Paaras' opinion, but like, I think there's so many reasons for that. I think one is HR becomes more like I tell my team all the time, we're not a support function, right? Like we can, if we want, which we can't, because I've made the choice for us. Like we're not paper pushers,
order takers.
We're not order takers, but we're also not just like do this because the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're in it with the business. Our job is to understand from a business leader what their wins are, what their problems are, how they think about their work over the next 2 to 3 years, and then how through people do we partner with them to achieve those goals. I think we're seeing the same shift. Chris, you and I talked about it. The work of a people team professional is different from when we were personnel,
So different.
right? And our job was to hire and fire people. But we also have to realize that for some people, that is actually what they wanted to do. And so as the HR function, as the people team functions transform, as people transform and businesses transform, it's not going to be the job it's not going to be the job for everybody. And it's a high hustle, but I think high reward job. You're always on, you're always modeling the way. I never miss an opportunity when people are like, oh, I shouldn't say that, HR's in the room. And I always say, no, you shouldn't say that because you're a grown up and you know better. It shouldn't be because HR's in the room, right?
Yeah.
It should be because like you're a super smart person and you know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, because then I can spend my time doing other things that are really going to drive your value forward versus like, Chris, you shouldn't say those words in a room full of people. Chris knows that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that.
And to add to your point as well, though, like you need a constant growth mindset, right? You think, to your point, how the skills of what it meant to be a HR leader when I started 20 years ago to now is like, you know, the data literacy, the digital transformation piece, this says everything. It's just moving so fast.
It's moving so fast.
You're now leading workforce councils in the company. You're involved in AI councils in the company. You know, there's just like you're dealing with pandemics. You're dealing with reactions to wars. You know, you're dealing with the politics and the DEI backlash.
All of it.
So many things being thrown at you from different directions, and there's always another thing. Like there's
always another thing.
And now every company is supposed to have a stance on all of those things. So employees are looking to their HR team and the business to say, "Hey, what's our stance on all of these things?"
That's right.
And now you're like,
"How do we think about it?
How do we? You know, we can't please everyone, and it's tough. It's a real tough time."
You know, Chris, it actually goes back to what you were talking about, though. If you spend I'm going to use another one of your words, intention on what your values are, it makes such a difference, because it's not every vote that a company has isn't going to go your way.
Yeah.
But if you understand that, hey, our intention or what we're trying to solve for, or the type of workplace that we want to be is X, is it going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time? No. But if people understand what the why is or what the focus is, whether you agree with it or not,
it's your foundation. Like one of the things that I realized, especially with us, where we went through such a big transformation where, you know, we lost 99% of our revenue during the pandemic. We were an events company trying to figure out how to survive, and there's just all of this chaos, is that your why and your purpose becomes your foundation. So rather than making decisions out of fear, out of, you know, just, you know, or just reacting to the climate, whether it's politics, etc., or COVID, sort of, if we make a decision based on our principles and our foundation and our why, and you just remove all the noise, that's what served us well. So whenever we're confused or we don't know where, like we just go back to that and we're like, okay,
go back to the center.
Yeah, let's make a decision from here, and typically we get it right because we're doing it from that place, not you know, not out of scarcity or fear or any other emotion.
Well, and think about it as a business leader, how much pressure you carry, and if you can go back to that center, or some people call it a North Star, we're also taking our emotion and our feeling out of it. It becomes a very clear, this is what's important. This is what's going to help us get to that versus how I feel about every
if I make decisions how I feel, I don't think we'll be here.
Exactly.
I had that long. And one of the things we did during that time as well is actually just bring the team together to let them make let them make the decisions. So like, the day it's going to affect all of our lives. And sometimes being vulnerable is its biggest strength. So for me, walking in the room that day saying to the team, I don't have a plan. I don't know what we're going to do, but the intention of today's meeting is to figure it out.
Yes, the intention of today's meeting is we're all going to work together to get there.
And we did, and we came up with a plan, and that involved building this digital TV studio to continue our work. And it was everyone thought we were crazy, and everyone said you should furlough and just wait it out. And we were like, nah, we're going to run into the headwind together. And
we were talking about in a different way, but we were talking about some of the trends that we're seeing in retention, or how long people are staying. I think the other muscle memory that we're working through is, I hear people say all the time, regardless of industry, during COVID, we focused on 3 things and we just did those 3 things. And I think what we also need to realize is we had to, during COVID, focus on 3 things. They were usually how do we stay safe? How do we keep people alive? And then how do we do the work that we need to do in some way, shape, or form, right? Now we've figured out how to live with COVID, and we're past that. And there are 68 priorities again. And that doesn't mean that companies aren't prioritizing properly. It's just we went from this very extreme, just do these 2 things, do these 3 things, and do them really well, to now we're back to needing to figure out, how do you prioritize 50 things? How do you give the right amount of attention to more than 3 things? And that doesn't mean that what we did during COVID was wrong. It was exactly what we needed to do then. And now we have to shift to do exactly what we need to do now. And those things are different.
Yeah. One of the things that how we spoke about the HR function evolving, but what do you think the future looks like for the HR function?
Yeah, I think it's the HR function is going to continue to be more and more integrated in how the businesses. So I'll give you an example. It used to be such a value to have a people team partner that could give you the data that was important for your function. Now everybody can get the data, and they can get the data really fast.
Instantly.
So the value, instantly. So the value, the HR, I tell my team all the time, we're not here to report the news. If you show up to the meeting and you're reporting the news, we have added no value. What we can do is say, hey, because we know this is the news, and we know these are the trends, and we know these are the things that are coming up over the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Here's what we need to do better differently to impact it, so that the newspaper the next time around isn't saying the same stuff, right?
I love this so much, by the way. HR is not here to report the news. I love it.
Yeah, we're just that's not what we're here to do. And again, you are either excited about that and you're like, yes, let me figure out, right, how to be a partner to this business leader to make a turnkey decision, or to really double down and do something the same over the next quarter because we're seeing a lot of results from it, or shift it because we're not. That's how I see this function continuing to transform, is that we have to transform with, alongside, and sometimes ahead of the people that we're lucky enough to serve, so that we can help them see the next North Star. We can be their path to yes, versus here are all the reasons that you can't do something. Help me understand what you're trying to solve for, and then trust me to help you come up with solutions that can do that, even though it might not be the exact same solution that you want, but a solution that will get you to the outcome that you want.
Listen, I feel like we need to do a whole series at this point. But I know I have to let you go at some point.
So fun.
I love some of the like the one-liners you have. I've been writing them down, like and the analogies that you got that you're cool. I know.
I'm sure you wrote down spinach in your teeth, right? Like
Yeah.
that has to be the top of your list.
Next time we do an interview, I'm gonna intentionally put spinach in my teeth
And see.
just to see if you let me know. You know, just gonna.
I will. I mean, I let people know if they're unbuttoned. I let people know if they have a stain, because I would want somebody to do that for me.
Yeah. Before I let you go, parting piece of advice for those HR leaders that are going to be sitting in your seat one day, those that are on their way, HR leaders of tomorrow, and then where can people connect with you if they want to reach out and say hi?
Yeah, absolutely. So, trust yourself and don't forget the value and power of people, no matter what seat you're in. Connect with not just your people teams and your business leaders, but people who do the work. I think staying in touch around what's really happening in your business, what people are really feeling, even though sometimes your feelings are going to be hurt because you're really trying to kill it and you might find out that you're not. Knowing is always better, right? We can make better decisions, different decisions if people are feel safe in telling us how things are going. So stay connected. I think the value of relationships and building familiarity, comfort, and trust will never not be important. Never. Like, people are always going to matter. How people feel because of how we treat them, how people feel because of how we don't treat them is always going to matter. And then as far as connection, I have all the P's. So Paaras Parker on LinkedIn, Paaras Parker 4 on Instagram. I like to share, pictures and stories about what we have going on at work, and my family sneaks up in there also. But always happy to chat and connect.
Triple P, because you got Paycor as well at the end. So now your new name's Triple P.
Well, do you know, have we emailed? So I actually go by P squared.
No, you don't.
I swear.
So where's the extra one come from then? Where's the fourth P?
Well, no, P squared is Paaras Parker.
Oh, of course.
It's P squared. And so then P cubed, right, would be the Paaras Parker.
So now we're
Paycor.
going down. It's in like Inception right now. It's getting too deep.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
I literally, all my emails are signed P2.
Really?
Only because I can't think.
Oh my god, I'm gonna check it. No worries.
Yeah, email me, and when I email you right back, it's just P2. That's what it says.
I thought Triple P was pretty cool actually. Now, like, I feel like your one's even better.
You know what, Chris? Let's play that back. You're right. That's a great idea.
Listen, everyone watching right now, there's going to be a link. Obviously, you can go over to check. There'll be a link to your LinkedIn below, right? So we'll connect everyone on LinkedIn. Check out Paycor.com. Also, there's going to be a link to the Paycor HR in 2025 Insights and Predictions report in the description. Wherever you're listening or watching, there'll be a link below. Pleasure have you on the show. It was super fun.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet you. Congratulations to you. This is great.
It was fun. We'll do it again soon. See you later.
That would be awesome. All right. Take care.